The night was colder than she had ever felt. Mara held her daughter close, wrapping the thin blanket tighter around the small body. The girl's breathing was weak, her lips pale from hunger. Above them, the alien sky burned with strange green and red lights. The war had turned the once blue sky into a canvas of unnatural colors. They were hiding near the edge of the ruined colony. The ground was blackened from fires that had swept through the settlement days ago. The air smelled of ash and smoke. Most people had already fled or died. Mara stayed because she had nowhere to go. Her daughter was too weak to walk far. Her stomach ached from hunger. She had not eaten in 2 days, giving what little food she found to the child. Now, she could no longer keep standing. Her knees trembled. She sank to the ground, holding her girl against her chest. That was when she saw him. A tall figure walked slowly through the ruined street. His steps were steady. He wore dark clothes and carried a pack over one shoulder. There was something in the way he moved. He looked alert, as if he was searching for something. Fear made her grip her daughter tighter. She had seen many men since the fall of the colony. Most were dangerous, but something about this one was different. He did not carry himself like a scavenger. His eyes moved with purpose, scanning the shadows. When he noticed her, he stopped a few steps away. They stared at each other in silence. The wind blew through the broken buildings, carrying the distant sound of metal grinding against stone. She swallowed her pride. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Please, my daughter is starving. I will give you 1 night with me if you feed her." Her words felt like poison in her mouth. She hated herself for saying them, but she had no choice. She had nothing else to offer. The man's expression did not change. He looked at the child, then at her. His eyes were hard to read. He said nothing. Mara waited for his answer. Her heart pounded. She had seen men smile at such an offer before, cruel and hungry for something other than food. She braced herself for that look. It never came. Instead, he said, "Follow me." Confusion flashed across her face. I cannot pay you in any other way," she whispered. "I did not ask for payment," he said. His voice was calm, but carried a quiet strength. He turned and began walking away. For a moment, Mara stayed where she was, unsure if she should trust him. But the thought of food for her daughter pushed her to stand. She followed, clutching the girl close to her chest. The man led them away from the colony, down a narrow path into the forest. The trees were dark and tall, their twisted branches blocking most of the strange sky. The air was colder here, but the smell of ash faded, replaced by damp earth and leaves. They walked in silence. Mara's mind was full of questions. Who was he? Why was he helping her? Was this some trap? She listened carefully for sounds of pursuit, but only heard their footsteps and the quiet breathing of her child. The path grew steeper. At one point, the man stopped and looked back. "You can rest for a moment if you need to," he said. She shook her head. "No, if there is food ahead, I will keep moving." He nodded and continued walking. After what felt like an hour, they reached a clearing. In the center stood a metal structure half hidden by vines and trees. It looked old, but a faint light glowed from inside. The man approached and placed his hand on a panel near the door. With a quiet click, it slid open. Warm air spilled out. Mara stepped inside and froze. There was light. Real light. Not from fire, but from smooth white panels on the ceiling. The air smelled of cooked meat. A small table stood near the wall, and on it were plates of food. Her daughter lifted her head slightly at the smell, her eyes wide with hunger. "Sit," the man said. She lowered the girl into a chair. Without a word, the man placed a plate in front of her. The little one began to eat quickly, tears in her eyes. Mara watched, still unable to believe what she was seeing. She had offered her body for 1 night, expecting to lose a piece of herself in exchange for her child's survival. Instead, this stranger had brought them here without touching her, without even asking her name. She felt something stir in her chest. It was not trust yet, but it was the first spark of hope she had felt since the sky had turned green. The man stood near the door, watching the forest outside. His posture was alert, as if he expected something to follow them. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. He did not look at her. "Because you need it," he said simply. There was no warmth in his tone, but no cruelty either, just a statement of fact. That night, as her daughter slept in a warm bed for the first time in weeks, Mara lay awake. She could hear strange metallic sounds in the distance. Something was moving in the forest. The man was still by the door, holding a weapon she had never seen before. She closed her eyes, unsure if she was safe or in more danger than ever. Morning came slowly. The forest outside was still and quiet, except for the distant call of strange birds. A soft golden light filtered through the window. Mara opened her eyes to find her daughter still asleep beside her, breathing steadily. For the first time in weeks, the girl's face looked peaceful. The bed was soft, the blanket was thick. The air inside the shelter was warm. It felt unreal. Mara sat up, looking around the room. The walls were smooth metal, clean and without rust. A small table near the bed held a bowl of fruit she did not recognize. The smell was sweet. She remembered the man, standing watch at the door the night before. Quickly, she got up and looked into the main room. He was there, sitting at the table, repairing something with small tools. His eyes lifted to meet hers. "You slept well," he said, not as a question, but as a quiet observation. "Yes," she replied carefully. "Where is this place?" He placed the tools down and leaned back slightly. "It is a safe house, old military design, hidden before the colony fell." Her eyes wandered to the strange devices along the walls. A row of smooth silver panels hummed with low energy. A screen displayed shifting maps of the surrounding area, glowing with red and green lights. She could not understand the symbols, but it looked alive, like a beating heart of technology. "You built this?" she asked. "I repaired it," he answered. "It was already here when I arrived. Most people never find it." She stepped closer to the table. The man's clothes were plain but strong, and now she could see the marks on his hands. Scars, old burns, a jagged cut across his knuckles. Every line told a story, but he did not share it. Her daughter woke up then, rubbing her eyes. She climbed out of bed and walked to the table. The man handed her a plate with warm bread and slices of the sweet fruit. The little girl smiled shyly before eating. "Why?" Mara asked softly. "Why are you doing this for us?" He looked at her for a moment, then returned his gaze to the map. "Because no one else will." She felt a weight in those words. It was not pride, not pity. It was something colder, heavier. Later, he handed her a clean set of clothes. They were simple but warm. "Wear these when you go outside," he said. "Outside?" she asked. "I need to check the perimeter. You should see what we are hiding from." The idea sent a shiver through her, but she followed. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The cold air rushed in, and the forest greeted them with its deep shadows. They walked to the edge of the clearing. The trees stood tall and silent, their trunks thick and dark. The man raised his hand, signaling her to stop. "Look there," he said, pointing between the trees. At first, she saw nothing. Then her eyes caught movement. A tall, thin shape shifted between the shadows. Its limbs were too long. Its body gleamed faintly like polished metal. Her breath caught. "What is that?" "A tracker," he said, "built by the ones who burned your colony. They do not eat. They do not sleep. They only hunt." Her heart pounded as she watched the machine's head turn slowly, scanning the air as if tasting the wind. It moved silently before vanishing behind a thick tree. "How many are there?" she whispered. "Enough to keep me awake most nights," he replied. "That is why you do not go outside alone." They returned to the shelter. Mara could not stop thinking about the tracker. It was not like the alien soldiers she had seen before. This thing looked as if it could wait forever, patient and merciless. Inside. The man checked the screens again. Tiny red dots moved slowly across the map. "It is getting closer," he murmured, almost to himself. Mara watched him work. Every movement was precise, careful. He spoke little, but she could feel the weight of his presence. It was like being near a wall that had never fallen, no matter how many storms had struck it. That night, as the lights inside dimmed, she lay awake beside her daughter. She could hear the quiet hum of machines protecting the shelter. Somewhere, out there, in the dark forest. The tracker was still searching. She closed her eyes and told herself she would leave as soon as her daughter was strong enough. But a small part of her did not want to leave at all. The forest seemed quieter than the night before. Too quiet. Mara stood at the small window of the shelter, holding her daughter's hand. Outside, the morning fog wrapped around the trees like a pale curtain. The air was still. No birds, no rustling leaves. The man was at the control panel again, scanning the moving dots on the glowing map. His eyes narrowed as he tapped a button. A soft chime echoed in the room. "What is it?" Mara asked. "Movement," he said. "More than one." She felt her stomach tighten. "Trackers." He nodded. The little girl looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Will they find us?" she asked. "Not today," he replied, his voice steady. "Not if we stay inside." Still, Mara could not stop herself from looking out the window again. At first, she saw nothing but the shifting fog. Then, in the distance between the trees, a shadow moved. It was not the quick motion of an animal. It was slow, measured. The shape was tall, much taller than a man, and its outline was sharp, unnatural. Her breath caught. She pulled her daughter back from the window. The man turned his head toward her. "Good," he said. "Never watch them too long. They notice." "Notice? What?" she asked. "Your eyes, your heartbeat, your fear." She shivered. Later, while her daughter rested, Mara found herself walking the narrow hall of the shelter. The metal floor was cold beneath her bare feet. She reached the storage room and stopped in the doorway. The man was inside, checking a long, black weapon she had never seen before. Its surface shimmered faintly under the lights, as if it was alive. "You fight them?" she asked. "Only when I must," he said. "The forest hides me, but it also hides them." She stepped inside the room, her voice low. "What happens if they find this place?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Then I fight until they stop moving, or until I do." His words made her heart tighten. There was no boast in them, only truth. That night, she woke to a faint, metallic sound outside. It was not loud, but it was sharp, like claws against stone. She sat up in bed, listening. The sound came again. She moved quietly to the window. At first, she saw nothing. Then, between the trees, she saw it. One of the trackers stood in the fog, motionless. Its head turned slightly, scanning the shelter. Red lights flickered across its body like searching eyes. It did not move closer. It did not leave. It simply stood there, as if waiting. Mara's pulse raced. She wanted to call the man, but before she could move, his voice came from behind her. "Step away from the glass." She turned. He was already holding the black weapon, his eyes fixed on the shadow outside. "Will it attack?" she asked. "Not yet," he said. "It is testing us." Her hands trembled. Testing us for what? For weakness. They stood in silence for a long moment. The tracker finally turned and vanished into the fog. The man lowered his weapon. "Tomorrow, we prepare. They are getting closer." Mara knew then that this shelter was not the safe place she had hoped it would be. It was a line in the dirt, and beyond it waited the darkness. The morning air was sharp and cold. The forest was still wet from a night of thin rain. Mara stepped outside with the man, following him to the edge of the clearing. He was carrying a small metal box and a coil of wire. She had learned not to ask what he was doing until he was ready to talk. He crouched near a post hidden under the tall grass. His hands moved with practiced speed, connecting wires and adjusting a small device. The soft hum of energy filled the air. "Is this to keep them out?" Mara asked. "Yes," he said, without looking up. "But nothing lasts forever. Trackers adapt." She watched him work. The quiet between them was heavy, yet not uncomfortable. It felt like the pause before a truth. She sensed something in the way his shoulders tensed, as if holding back more than just words. "How long have you been here?" she asked. 3 years, he said. The number surprised her. 3 years alone. He straightened, wiping the dirt from his hands. Not always alone. There was a weight in his voice. She could feel it pressing between them. They walked back toward the shelter, and she followed him to the workbench inside. He opened the metal box. Inside were old, worn photographs. She saw a group of men and women in dark uniforms, smiling under the bright sun. Their faces were young and full of fire. One of them was him. "You were a soldier," she said softly. He nodded. "Earth Defense Fleet. We fought in the Outer Rim Wars. My unit was sent here when the first attacks began. We thought we could hold the colony until help arrived." Mara could see the story building in his eyes, a memory that burned too deep to fade. "We never got that help," he said. "The enemy cut our comms. They hunted us in the open. One by one, my people fell. Good soldiers, good friends." His voice was low, but the quiet pain in it was sharp. "There were 10 of us when we landed. On the last day, there were only 2, me and my captain. She was injured. I carried her into the forest, but the trackers found us. I tried to fight them off, but, ... double quotes. He stopped. Mara waited, not wanting to push. "She told me to run," he said finally. "She fired the last of our charges to cover me. When the smoke cleared, she was gone." The room felt colder. Mara's throat tightened. She could see the image in her mind, the loss written on his face. "I buried what was left of my uniform that night," he said. "But I kept her words. Never stop protecting people, even if you cannot save them all." For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the shelter's systems. Mara looked at him, seeing not just the soldier, but the man who had carried that promise for years. Alone in the dark. Her daughter walked into the room then, carrying a small wooden carving she had found on a shelf. "Did you make this?" she asked him. He looked at the carving and nodded. "When there is time, I work with my hands. It helps keep my mind steady." The girl smiled and handed it back. He took it gently, as if it were something precious. Mara saw the way his eyes softened at the child's smile. She wondered if he had once dreamed of a family. Before the war took everything from him, later, as the day faded, they sat near the heater in the main room. Mara spoke quietly. "If you had the chance to leave this planet, would you?" He did not answer right away. His gaze stayed on the fire. "Not until I know no one else needs me here." It was a simple answer, but it carried the weight of everything he had lost. That night, Mara found it harder to sleep. The sound of the rain outside mixed with the echo of his words. Somewhere in her chest, something shifted. She was no longer just thinking of escape. She was thinking of him. The air felt different that morning. Heavy still. Even the forest seemed to sense it. Mara woke to find the man already standing at the map screen. His jaw was tight. The red dots were closer than she had ever seen them. They were not drifting anymore. They were moving with purpose. "How far?" she asked quietly. "Too close," he replied. Her daughter sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "What is wrong?" she asked. The man turned toward her and forced a calm tone. "Nothing yet, but we may have visitors soon." He began moving quickly around the shelter, checking weapons and sealing windows. Mara followed him, her voice sharp with worry. You said they would not find us. I said, not yet, he answered. That time is over. By midday, the air outside had grown colder. The light felt strange, as if the sky itself was dimming. From the narrow window, Mara caught movement in the distance. Shadows slipped between the trees, here one moment, and gone the next. The man saw it too. Scouts, he said. They look for weak points before the rest come. Her stomach turned. And if they find one, then we fight. The weight of his words settled over her. She glanced at her daughter, who sat quietly, watching them both. The child was brave, but Mara could see the fear in her eyes. That evening, the man prepared a bag with food, water, and a small knife. He handed it to Mara. If I fall, take her to the river. Follow it west until you see the cliffs. There is another shelter there. She stared at him, shaking her head. I will not leave you. You will, if you want her to live. Her voice rose, sharper. Then she intended, do not talk like that. You are not going to fall. For a moment, his eyes softened. A faint smile touched his lips. You have a fighter's heart. The sound outside came suddenly. A deep metallic scrape, followed by another, closer this time. The shelter's sensors gave a low warning tone. Red lights blinked on the screen. They are here, he said. He moved to the door, weapon in hand. Mara stood behind him, her heart pounding. Through the narrow slit in the door, she saw them. 3 trackers, tall and gleaming in the fading light. Their heads turned slowly, scanning the ground as they moved in. Perfect silence. The largest one stopped and looked directly at the shelter. Its red eyes glowed brighter. Mara felt the air grow colder. The man's voice was calm but sharp. Get her inside the back room. Stay low. Do not open the door for anyone but me. She wanted to argue, but the sound of claws scraping the wall cut through her words. The metal groaned under the pressure. Mara, he said firmly, go. She pulled her daughter close and hurried toward the back. Before the door closed behind her, she looked once more at him. He stood with the weapon ready, his body steady, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. The last thing she saw before the door sealed was his eyes, locked on the shadows moving outside. The night came quickly, as if the sky wanted to hide what was about to happen. A deep red glow spilled over the forest, casting long shadows across the clearing. The moon hung heavy above them, stained like blood. In the back room, Mara held her daughter close. The hum of the shelter's walls seemed louder now. Every sound from outside pressed against her ears. Then she heard it. The sharp crack of a weapon firing. The deep roar of energy tearing through the night. She pressed her face against the cold metal door, listening. There were more sounds now. The hiss of alien machines. The hard thud of metal against metal. And under it all, his voice low and steady, calling out short commands to himself, as if keeping his focus alive. Outside, the man moved like a shadow against the red light. His rifle spat bursts of blue fire, each shot slicing through the darkness. The first tracker fell, sparks erupting from its chest. But the second was already moving in from the side. It struck with a clawed arm, the blow shattering part of the wall. The man rolled away, landing in a crouch. He fired again, hitting the machine's leg. It staggered, but did not fall. The third tracker circled, its glowing eyes fixed on him. It moved fast, too fast for its size, forcing him to step back. Toward the open ground on inside, the shelter shook from the impacts. A section of the back wall gave a sudden groan, and Mara saw a crack open. Cold air rushed in. Then a thin clawed limb slipped through, searching. She grabbed the small knife he had given her and stepped forward. Her heart pounded in her chest. The claw moved closer to her daughter. Mara struck, driving the blade into the joint. The limb jerked back with a metallic screech. She pulled her daughter toward the far corner just as another explosion rattled the room. Outside, the man fought, under the blood moon's light. Sparks lit the air around him. His weapon roared again, cutting through the second tracker's chest. It collapsed, but not before striking him across the side. He stumbled, his breath sharp, but stayed on his feet. The last tracker lunged. He ducked under its arm, sliding a small explosive into the opening in its armor. He dove away, hitting the ground hard. The blast lit the clearing like a flash of lightning. When the smoke cleared, only broken metal remained. The forest was silent again, except for the sound of his breathing. He stood slowly, pressing a hand to his side where dark stains marked his clothes. His steps were unsteady as he walked back to the shelter. The door opened, and Mara was there, her daughter clinging to her. Her eyes were wide with fear and relief. "You are hurt," she said, reaching for him. He gave a small shake of his head. "I have been hurt before," but his voice was weaker now. She helped him inside, guiding him to a chair. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The room smelled of smoke and scorched metal. The world outside was still dangerous, but inside, there was a quiet victory. "You fought for us," she whispered. He met her eyes. "I told you. That is what I do." The forest was calm the next morning, as if it had never held danger at all. The blood moon was gone, replaced by a pale sunrise, spilling gold over the trees. The man moved slowly, his side wrapped in fresh bandages. Mara had cleaned the wound, as best she could. He did not complain, though she saw the strain in his face. "You cannot stay here now," he said as he checked the map screen. "The fight will bring more of them. We have to move." "Where will we go?" she asked. He looked at her for a moment. Somewhere safer, somewhere with others. By midday, they were ready. The man carried his rifle, a smaller pack, and the last of the shelter's supplies. Mara held her daughter's hand, the girl clutching a small wooden carving he had given her before they left. They walked deep into the forest, crossing streams and climbing steep hills. The man moved with the confidence of someone who knew every path. Whenever Mara's daughter grew tired, he lifted her without a word and carried her until her strength returned. Hours later, they reached a ridge. Below them stretched a hidden valley. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the faint sound of voices drifted up. Small houses stood in neat rows, each one built from wood and metal salvaged from the ruins. Mara's breath caught. "This is real. It is home for those who survived," he said. "I built some of it. Others came later and helped it grow." As they walked down the slope, people stepped out to meet them. Faces lit with cautious smiles. Hands reached to greet them. Children ran to see the newcomers. Mara's daughter laughed. For the first time in weeks, she let go of her mother's hand and ran to join the other children. Mara watched her, her heart swelling. The man spoke quietly to an older woman who seemed to lead the group. Mara could not hear the words, but the woman nodded and gestured toward a small house near the center of the valley. When he returned, he said simply, "It is yours." Mara stared at him. "Ours. But I have nothing to give you." "You gave me nothing when we met," he said, "and I asked for nothing. That has not changed." Her voice trembled. "That night, when I offered myself, I thought it was the only way to save her." His eyes held hers. "No one should have to bargain to be treated like a human." The words settled deep inside her. She wanted to speak, but her throat was too tight. Instead, she stepped closer and touched his hand. He did not pull away. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Mara stood outside her new home. Her daughter played nearby, laughter echoing in the warm air. The man stood a short distance away, speaking with the other settlers. She knew the danger was not gone. The trackers still roamed the forest, but for the first time, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt the promise of a future. In her heart, she understood that the man had not just given them a home. He had given them back their place in the world, and that was worth more than anything she could have offered in return.